What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the debut album by Monoxide Child. Basically, this project is called Chainsmoker LP, and it came out in the fall of 2004. So basically, Monoxide Child, if you don't know, basically, if you don't know, Monoxide Child is one half of the group Twiztid, which is kind of a demonic underground rap type group from Psychopathic Records, and was a subsidiary, was one of the bigger artists on the Psychopathic Records label, which was ICP's label as far as that pitch happens. Now they're no longer Twiztid is no longer on Psychopathic Records, but they do have like a Magic Ninja Entertainment label. Twiztid does have a Magic Ninja Entertainment label, which is pretty fly also. It's a pretty good pitch. That has some good Juggalo stuff on there and stuff like that, it has to say. But this particular album, Monoxide Child went solo in 2004. Jamie Madrox went solo in 2006, so they did do some solo projects. I mean, they're still a part of Twiztid and they continue, but Monoxide Child actually put out a recent album. Monoxide Child recently put out a solo album in February 2024 called Chainsmoker LP2, which is another good pitch like this one. So this one's basically the original format of that. Pretty good pitch. I do like the Newport menthol cigarette album covers for us. That pitch kind of have some good stuff to kind of get here. Monoxide Child's pretty dope. Monoxide Child has some pretty dope stuff on this particular project. Now the unfortunate thing about this album is just the fact that it is kind of subpar. This is somewhat of a dope project. I do like the Juggalo aesthetic and stuff like that, but it's kind of a subpar project just because some of these poor type productions and stuff like that, I'd have to say. On top of that, it's going to be a little bit trickier to kind of talk about this particular album just because the fact that Spotify kind of has like the album name screwed up and stuff like that. So it just has a different kind of labeling of this particular album compared to like the album that's on Wikipedia and stuff. So I just would have to keep going back and forth, and just stuff like that. This would be trickier to kind of remember. But I did at least do that for the 4 songs I recommend. So I'm not full blown sure if there's a music video or a single for this particular project, but I would have to say it's still pretty quality in relative senses. I mean, it's going to get kind of a subpar score, but the songs are good, are pretty dope to kind of have this. It's still worth it to pick up just within a relative sense. I just would have to say it's this kind of concept that's a little bit haphazard. That was kind of the same thing with the Jamie Madrox album. That one was a little bit haphazard too. It's just kind of the concept. I think they're just better amalgamated as Twiztid as far as that pitch kind of goes. The Twiztid albums just as like a duo kind of fared tons better compared to some of these solo ones. Not sure about Chainsmoker. Not sure quite yet about Chainsmoker LP2, but I would have to say about this one, it's just kind of subpar. But there are some quality songs on here, but just not nearly enough. So really, there's 11 songs in this particular album. There's 14 songs in the album, but minus 3 skits. That would narrow it down to 11. So this is kind of the pitch. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 4 songs out of 11 I recommend on here. That's kind of the severe thing about it. It's just saying that there's not a super ton of these, but I would have to say there's the ones that are good are worth picking up. So the 4 songs I recommend would be Blaze, which is known as History on Spotify, Evil, which is known as Chainsmoker on Spotify, Slut, which is known as Out of My Way on Spotify, and Out of My Way, which is known as Evil on Spotify. So I'd have to say that in particular. It's just a good concept to get some of these. Basically, to talk about some of these, just because there's not a single, it's just difficult to really, just because there's not a single, it's difficult to really manage and know tons about this particular project. Even on like the Juggalo Wikipedia, as far as that pitch kind goes, there's not a ton of information really about it. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about Slut. This is a pretty nice one. Basically, this is like a floaty kind of juggalette and ladies kickback of a song. I'd have to say in particular, pretty good concept for that. It's like a dizzy kind of blazed out kind of fun commercial juggalo type hit, I'd have to say. This is basically like some dizzy kind of blazed out fun, I would have to say in particular. And this is like and this is a pretty good commercial juggalo hit. So the thing about this particular album, at least the songs I picked out has some real good commercial type appeal. I definitely feel like Slut's a real nice one for that relative pitch. It's a real floaty kind of belly. It's a real floaty kind of malaise type one that just works pretty damn well. I'd say definitely a good juggalette and chicas. Definitely a good juggalette and chicas type tune to smoke up to and things like that. Just within that relative pitch. Great residential type tune just within that fanfare. Some of these songs in this particular project, I mean, due to the with this album being called Chainsmoker LP, you would definitely feel like there'd be some songs on here for smoking. And there are at least 2 or 3, maybe a few more than that. But I didn't find like a super ton of songs just for direct smoking. But at least I feel like Slut and I would also say Blaze are some pretty good ones for that particular pitch. There's another one on here called Shoe Fist that I didn't recommend as much, but that could have almost been like an almost song, but it didn't quite meet the cut as far as that particular kind of goes. But I definitely feel like Slut's a pretty nice one just for some residential smoking with chicas and fanfare like that, I'd have to say. Evil's a pretty nice one. This has Jamie Madrox and Anybody Kill It on here as well, so that's a definite good pitch to kind of get that, I'd have to say. Evil's basically like a classic kind of haunting Twiztid boiler, I'd have to say in particular. Pretty nice one for that concept. It's like a sifting kind of demonic, tore out of your head gem, I would definitely have to say. This is just good for some manic fun. So if you like typical Twiztid, typical Juggalo type fare as far as that pitch can goes, this is just like a classic and vintage type tune, just within that sense, circa the mid 2000s as far as that pitch kind of goes. It could also be like the Twiztid old days as far as that particular kind of goes along with it. Just a real nice one. This is a haunting type one, just great for autumn stuff like that. Another good vintage Twiztid type tune that doesn't have Jamie Madrox on there, but it does have Esham is Out of My Way. This is a real nice one. It's like a haunting kind of glazed autumn outing of a song. I'd have to say in particular it's like a haunting kind of glazed autumn outing commerce. I would have to say in particular is just good. The song is definitely some good cool weather breeze. I would have to say in particular, and this is just a smoke one kind of drift around type tune. I'd have to say it's definitely good for some drifting, just residential type fare, just in the cooler weather, just like mid October, late September, some pitches like that, just to kind of get some residential snackage, just late night type tunes, good crispy kind of music as far as that particularly kind of goes along with it. The sound definitely needed more songs Out of My Way, I'd have to say in particular. Just a real shrill type one to kind of get. Esham does a pretty great job on here as well, so that's a nice one. And then Blaze is a real nice one. This is obviously a nice one. This is a good smokish type tune. Once again, this works pretty well with Slut, and to a lesser extent, it works well with Shoe Fits, I'd have to say. And by lesser extent, I mean Shoe Fits is the lesser extent. But basically, it's like a mid-pace kind of smokish tune, I'd have to say. Basic hangout blazer of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a Juggalo gem. I would definitely have to feel like this is just some good 1 a.m. after hours kind of burnt out of your mind type music, I'd have to say. And it's great for the after hours, just pizza in the fridge, some stuff like that, fried chicken in the fridge, some of those type pitches, just kind of watching leftover videos, stuff like that, catching like the late night news, some of those type pitches, late night TV, comedy, like, like vintage Jay Leno, some of those type folks, David Letterman, some of those type folks in particular. I just would have to say some good late night type stuff as far as that particularly kind of goes. Real kind of smokish type tune. This works also for some after hours kind of PlayStation type music. I'd have to say pretty good hangout type tune to kind of get in particular. I'd suppose that's a nice one. It's real boppish type one. But to basically talk about some of these songs I didn't recommend on here, basically one of which would be Shoe Fist. Now this is almost an almost song. I feel like this kind of has like a floaty type beat on here. This is another one that's kind of similar to Blaze, I would have to say in like a certain sense, but it just was not an affable enough smoking song to really get on here. It's kind of a waste of an Anybody Kill a feature, and then this Cash Colo type dude. It was just too bad about that particular, just because I would have felt like this could have been a lot more of a damaging type song if it had a little bit better production. There's some other ones on here like another song that was almost an almost song was What Would You Do? What Would You Do is just kind of a rugged type song against the enemies of Monoxide Child and stuff like that. People who have it out for him and that sort of pitch. Just kind of one that reminds me of something that Snoop Dogg would have done with Murder Was the Case. Some of those type pitches. Just a good concept with that. That would seem within a good concept, but it just didn't have good enough production type fare. I mean, I thought within the first 5 or 10 seconds of the song that the production fare was going to be a lot better, but it just didn't really relate to much. Kind of felt like a leftover Twiztid type tune that just didn't work that well. I mean, Twiztid definitely has better variation. Twiztid definitely has better variations of these types of songs. I mean, it's pretty pedestrian just in its feel. This feels like a city hopping type tune. I would have to say about What Would You Do, just some residential type fare for just some smokish and stuff like that, but it just was not quite up to snuff in terms of like the sheer full-blown quality about it. There's some kind of homely and optimistic songs on here like Bring Me Down. That was kind of a poor type one. Yeah, there just were some poor productions on here. Some of these other type ones just didn't really get up to snuff as far as that pitch kind of went along with it. See Me was just kind of a story type song that just was not that compelling as far as that pitch went along with that. I think I would have preferred the song See Me's production on the song What Would You Do, and that probably would have been a better song than the What Would You Do production could have been on See Me. Just for that story type song would have been pretty better pitch to have gotten that. There's just some ones on here that are just not that engaging, just kind of fall flat in terms of like the factor of just having that thrillness of just like the aspect of something that could be more songs to chain smoke and get torched to and stuff like that. More moments like Slut, more moments like Blaze, more moments like Evil, some of those type moments, especially in particular, and maybe even like a nightclub song, another residential song. Something like What Would You Do with a little bit more thrilling production, something like that, and a nightclub song, a dance club song, something like that, some of those type pitches. I just feel like this is not a very outing type album. I'd have to say it has some of those residential homely type. It has some of those residential homely type smokish type tunes for just kicking it at the crib and stuff like that, but it doesn't really have a ton of outing type songs on here. It's just more kind of lackadaisical, this kind of gas station, just around the neighborhood type smokish type tunes and stuff like that, just kind of being baked as hell, stuff like that, I'd say, but it doesn't always pull off those particular vibes. Not enough smoking songs on here, definitely. I would definitely have to say for an album cover like this with like the Newport menthols and stuff like that, definitely needs some more smokish type tunes, but it just didn't really cut loose enough as much as it needed to. It needed to be more recreational. So I'm gonna basically give this album me recommending 4 songs out of 11 on here, not counting the 3 skits. I would have to say I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 3.75 out of 10. It's about as much as I can really do with it. I do like these songs; they are worth it, worth the purchase as far as that particularly kind of goes. The songs that are good are pretty good, but there's just not nearly enough of them. I was kind of surprised that Monoxide Child didn't have more to say on this particular product in terms of like a compelling aspect. He's definitely an interesting character when he's with Twiztid and stuff like that, but this just didn't translate on this particular album. So the social score, I'm gonna go ahead and give the social score like a 4.25 out of 10 because I feel like two of the songs that I almost because I feel like two of the songs I almost recommended on here do have some social value, like What Would You Do and Shoe Fit. Some of those type ones are some extra smokage and residential type bops just within a relative sense. This is kind of the concept that these just didn't quite get up to snuff full blown. We're not some of Sheerly Monoxide Child's best in terms of what he could have done with it as far as that pitch kind of goes. I feel like the social score is just a little bit beneath average, just relative mediocre subpar type territory. There are some gems on here, but it's just kind of a flatter type project in terms of like the electricity that it has. So in terms of the future, like Monoxide Child just dropped an album in February 2024 called Chainsmoker LP2, which is a pretty good pitch. I'm gonna have to see about that one eventually. We'll have to get to some of that. There is a new Twiztid album coming out in 2024, so we'll have to see about that as well. And there's some more Twiztid stuff. And there is some more Twiztid stuff I would like to get to as far as that pitch has with it. But this is kind of somewhat mediocre, but it does have some gems on here. I would have to say some good enough concepts to get for this for a relative part, but it's just kind of the concept that it is kind of subpar just within a sense. I just would have to say that if you do come looking for this project, just realize that it's somewhat dicey. Just realize that it's somewhat dicey and could have and leaves more to be desired. I'd have to say in particular, but there are some decent gems on here that still make it worth the purchase.